If you poll most Americans, they'll tell you the best country in the world is, well, America. And if America is so great, then surely our greatest sport must, by the transitive property, be the greatest sport in the world. And the problem with that is the rest of the globe disagrees. But why is that? Why does the game that resonates with Americans so deeply not move the needle for the rest of the planet? Is it because football is a metaphor for expansion, the brutality of manifest destiny, and the lawless settlement of the West that birthed this country as we know it today? I mean, I guess, but because I don't have a degree in history, I have no idea how to argue that. But I do have a degree in hot sports takes from the Stephen A. Smith Academy, and I have some concrete arguments for why football hasn't become a global phenomenon. Why the world doesn't love the NFL is coming up right after this. Just look at some failed attempts at football colonialism, like NFL Europe, which was terminated in 2007 after losing roughly $30 million a year. There are a few semi-pro football leagues in Europe, including the German Football League, which produced Bengals receiver Moritz Boehringer, and the American Football League of China, which comprises local Chinese players and Americans working overseas. It's clear there's a taste for football elsewhere, but it hasn't captured imaginations like other American exports such as baseball and basketball. Shut up, Canadians. Hey. So why is that exactly? The world's most popular sport without question is soccer, or as the rest of Earth calls it, non-American football. But for the sake of not twisting everyone's brain into a pretzel, let's agree to call football football and soccer soccer. And what's the biggest fundamental difference between soccer and football besides football players playing through torn ACLs and soccer players hitting the deck like Willem Dafoe in Platoon after getting their feet tangled? It's the fact that soccer is continuous and football is a start and stop sport. Soccer comprises two 45-minute periods and then stoppage time that no one has or ever will understand. Imagine running a 2-minute drill at the end of a game and not knowing when the clock is going to run out. So, like living in Andy Reid's brain? Football, on the other hand, works in a completely different manner. The average football game lasts 3 hours and 12 minutes, but can vary dramatically based on the amount of incompletions, penalties, reviews, delays, overtime, or if the Jets are playing the Dolphins. In those 3 hours from when the clock counts down from 15 minutes in the first quarter to triple zeros in the fourth, only about 11 minutes of that duration is spent playing actual football in between the whistles. Sounds ungodly, dull, and tedious, but the part of what draws us to that is the building of tension, the ability to analyze what just happened, speculating what is about to happen, and being able to go get a beer and not miss a snap is what makes football unlike any other sport in the world. Soccer is a sport of mostly non-stop action, broken up only by intermission and a brief break after a goal is scored, where the announcers are able to spend 10 minutes yelling a one-syllable word and the scorer can get third-degree turf burn sliding on their knees. One of the great drawbacks of football that even Americans will decry is the many ad breaks. America is also the land of capitalism, and it's evident when you sit down to watch a football game. Capitalism is also the reason Jimmy Garoppolo is making $27.5 million this season to hand the ball off 40 times a game and throw 5 wide open passes to George Kittle and make one more pass towards Aaron Andrews after the game.
Yeah, feels great, baby.
According to data gathered by the Wall Street Journal in 2018, 62 minutes of a football broadcast is spent in commercial break. That's 1/3 of the game. Extrapolated, that means the average NFL fan who watches 250 minutes of coverage a week will spend 24 hours, a full day of their lives, watching commercials during NFL games. Compare that to 0 ad breaks during 2 45-minute periods in soccer, and you've got the rest of the world's strongest argument for disliking our beautiful game. In terms of average annual income per person, the United States ranks 9th in the world. That matters when you decide what your favorite pastimes are. For some of us, it's buying a yacht, and for others, it's feeding your family. Apply that disparity on a global level and it makes sense why football isn't particularly popular. Organized football requires an oblong leather ball, at least 22 padded, gloved, helmeted participants, a tee, 8 pylons, and 2 sets of uprights. Soccer requires just a soccer ball and 2 goals. It's a cheaper, simpler game that can be played anywhere with any level of income. Between registration fees, equipment, and travel, the average American family spends $2,300 on kids' sports in a single year, per a survey conducted by Utah State. Children and teenagers in developing countries are able to hone their soccer skills anywhere on dirt, concrete, pavement, or grass without worrying about serious injury. Well, except maybe getting hit by a car, but you get the point. Football is contingent on the safety of its players, and in a game modeled after high-speed collisions and trench warfare, it's understandable for people around the globe to not want to subject their children to a sport that threatens their livelihood, safety, and well-being, especially in countries that don't have the medical infrastructure you would find in the United States. Football was unpopular globally before the discovery of head injuries leading to CTE, but after learning of football's potential to sabotage a person's cognitive functioning, it makes it all the harder to tell Livingston Dorchester from Surrey, England, that his son Graham Framington Dorchester should ruin his brain with football before he even gets to attend Oxford University, where he'll major in tea drinking and adding random and unnecessary U's to words. I heartily apologize if I have any English viewers. Well, it looks like we happen to have a British viewer, as fellow YouTuber Nin Lee will give us his thoughts on the NFL before I get to my last point.
I believe that there are many reasons why the NFL hasn't really caught on around the world, but the main ones are confusion. A lot of people don't actually know the rules of American football, especially in Europe and Asia. Other sports, such as soccer and rugby, are firmly entrenched into the culture of these countries. Ignorance. People, especially in England, are quick to hate on what they don't know or don't understand. If they actually gave the NFL a chance, I'm sure their opinions would change. The NFL has done brilliantly to combat these problems here in England, and the proof is that the NFL is now more popular here than it's ever been. However, replicating the same for the rest of the world will take considerably more time and effort. Whether the NFL actually wants to or not remains to be seen.
Thanks, Nin. Everyone, please subscribe to his channel. So why have other American sports like baseball and basketball work their way into parts of the world while football has yet to do the same? Well, baseball hooked its claws into Japan after the Second World War because it was played by occupying GIs who were there to rebuild the country after the fall of their empire, and we nuked the shit out of it. The game resonated because it was their first introduction to team sports, unlike their usual pastimes like kendo, sumo wrestling, and invading other countries. Had football been a more popular sport than baseball in the years directly following World War II, it's possible the Banzai Blitz would be back in style. You know I'm Asian and I can tell these jokes, right? As for basketball, it's the most marketable sport of the three. Players' faces are unobscured, making it easy to latch onto international stars like LeBron James, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Yao Ming, and Brian Scalabrine. Like soccer too, it's a less expensive alternative to football and can take as few as 2 players to start a game, which comes in handy in places where famine has decimated the population. Thanks, Mr. Stalin. Hey. There's a greater reason for expansion besides cultural transfusion: the almighty dollar, or pound, euro, yen, doubloon, space credit, etc. Access to other countries means exponential revenue. It's why the NBA was so careful to not offend China, a country of 1 billion potential fans that has every owner watching with dollar signs in their eyes. It's such a significant segment of the NBA's revenue that the Daryl Morey incident could cause the league's salary cap to fall by as much as 10%. Yikes. The point is that there's a reason for exporting our favorite American sports, and even for the richest of them, the NFL and football in general has yet to find its footing on foreign soil. Their greatest prospect right now is across the pond in London, England, where the NFL has held games since 2007, not coincidentally the same year NFL Europe got the axe. Civic pride and new generations being raised on the sport is perhaps the only thing that can make football an intrinsic passion and way of life in another country, rather than a constant source of confusion and willful ignorance. Do we want the rest of the world to be like us? Well, maybe not everything, but if you're just taking the good stuff, football is a great place to start. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please do not forget to check out the video sponsor, MyBookie, and use my code POINTS100 for a 100% cash match on your first deposit. I'm 5 Points Vids, and you made it to my next video.
Fuck you, Spanos.